A recruiter once told me that my resume read like a buffet table. She said I was giving companies way too many options, that it was muddled, and that she couldn't really tell what I actually wanted to do. And then she looked at me and said,
Do you want to be a brand marketer? A content marketer? Like, what do you actually want?
and y'all, I didn't have a clean answer. That moment was embarrassing, but it was also a moment that I realized I needed to stop throwing spaghetti at the wall and start making real decisions about my career. Today, we're going to talk about what actually changes when you pivot careers, specifically how people perceive you, and what absolutely doesn't change. Because if you're sitting on a pivot right now and you're scared of what people might think, this video is for you. Here's the first thing that changes when you pivot, and it's the story that other people tell about you. Before your pivot, you're an expert in your lane. People know what to do with you. After a pivot, suddenly people have a whole bunch of questions. Why would you leave? Wasn't that a stable role? Do you even know what you want? And underneath all of those questions is one assumption: that changing direction means you're unreliable, that you couldn't make up your mind, that you didn't plan well enough. But here's what I want you to sit with for a second. Most of the women I know who pivoted, including myself, didn't pivot because they were confused. They pivoted because they finally got clear. And for me, it took a real conversation with an old colleague to finally see it. I was 2 months into my job search after a layoff, applying to anything with marketing in the title, like brand marketing, content marketing, comms, you name it, I was applying, okay? And I was getting rejected left and right. And she hit me up and basically said, look, you need to stop all this. You've clearly been doing product marketing for the last 5 or 6 years of your career. That's what you're good at. That's what you need to go after. And that hit different because I have been so focused on staying broad with my applications that I didn't stop to think and claim the thing that I had been doing all along. So yes, the pivot does change how people label you, but what it really changes is how you see yourself. A lot of women stop asking, how do I stay on the path? And then start asking themselves, was this even my path to begin with? That's not confusion, friend, that's growth. Now I want to talk about something that people love to dance around, but I'm not going to dance around it. Sometimes a pivot is about money, and that's completely valid. When I started really researching product marketing roles versus the generalist marketing roles I had been going after for a little bit, I saw a difference of $20,000 to $40,000 a year per year, friend. And my eyes got huge, okay? Because I have a mortgage, I have daycare to pay for, I have a life that costs actual dollars. So when I saw that number, I was like, why am I out here leaving money on the table? Why am I doing that? Because I'm too scared to claim that lane. Now, people will sometimes look at a pivot and assume you're just chasing a paycheck, like that's shallow or short-sighted. But financial strategy is a part of self-respect. Knowing your market value and moving toward that isn't a character flaw. So if part of your reason for pivoting is that a new lane pays better, good. That's a grown woman decision. Own that. Okay, but here's the part that I really want to get into, because I think this is what's actually keeping a lot of you from making the move. It's not really about what other people think. It's about what you think about yourself. My biggest fear when I decided to pivot into product marketing was, am I even qualified to do this job? My whole career, I worked in places where I did PMM work, but they called the role something different. So even though I've been doing the work for years, the go-to-market strategy, the positioning, the messaging, the launches, I kept asking myself, who am I to say that I'm a PMM? And that question almost kept me stuck. What finally shifted it for me was looking at my own work history honestly, not through the lens of my job titles, but through the lens of what I had actually done. And when I did that, I realized that the gap wasn't my skills. The gap was my language that I used on my resume and everywhere else. My old LinkedIn said things like wrote email copy and built PowerPoint decks, which technically is accurate, but completely underselling what I was actually doing. So I rewrote it. Wrote email copy became developed end-to-end messaging and positioning strategies. Built PowerPoint decks became led go-to-market strategies and storytelling for product launches. Same work, completely different signal. And that reframe is what started getting me in front of the right recruiters. Not because I suddenly became more qualified, but because I finally started presenting myself like I already was qualified. So if you're sitting there thinking that you're not qualified to pivot, I want you to take a second and ask yourself, are you actually unqualified, or have you just been describing your work in the wrong language? So here's what a pivot doesn't touch. It doesn't erase your skills, your track record, and it doesn't erase your work ethic or your ability to figure things out in a new environment. The stuff you built in your old lane, like communication, problem solving, project management, pattern recognition, or even knowing how to read the room, that stuff travels with you. As a matter of fact, that's usually what makes a pivot work, because you're not starting from zero. You're starting from a different angle with a full toolkit. What also doesn't change is the need to prove yourself in rooms that are slow to recognize your value. A new title doesn't automatically protect you from bias, and a new industry doesn't guarantee a better culture. That part is real, friend, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But that's true whether you pivot or not. So it's not a reason to stay somewhere that's capping you. One last thing, if you're about to make a move, pay attention to how you're telling your story. There's a difference between telling your pivot story like you're defending yourself and telling it like you've made a decision, because one of those sounds like uncertainty. The other one sounds like leadership. You don't owe anybody an apology for outgrowing a role. You don't have to frame it as,
I just needed a change, or I wanted to try something different.
That language is super vague, and it invites the assumption that you didn't know what you were doing. Instead, try saying something like this. Here's what I built. Here's what I learned. Here's where I saw an opportunity. And here's what I'm bringing into this next chapter. That's you being clear about what you want. And that clarity makes hiring managers take you seriously. All right, friend, that's all I have for you today. So what actually changes when you pivot? The label changes. The assumptions people make change. Your positioning in this crazy job market changes. What doesn't change is your capability, your value, or your right to move towards something better. A career pivot doesn't mean that you couldn't decide. It usually means you finally did. So if this video helped you think through your own pivot, drop a comment below and tell me where you are in your process. Are you still considering it, or have you already made the jump? And remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! What a girl wants, what a girl needs. Shout out to Christina Aguilera.